the high plains of the Midwest, I bid you good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whatever your time zone might be. My nod to the late and great Art Bell. I'm Keith Sharp.
And I'm G. Dressel.
And we welcome you to Life After Life, a paranormal webcast where we talk about the paranormal, UFOs, or the unexplained. And the biggest question of them all, what happens when we die? Stay tuned. And there we go.
Hey, good job,
everybody. Hey, I think finally that was the
we did it.
The best one yet. The best one yet. Yeah, I think Carl. Hang on, guys. Carl, I think is having a problem with the link. Okay, as you can hear that. Okay.
No worries.
Yeah,
I'm excited. Super excited to have him on.
I sent it on email. I think he wants me to put it on there. Send the StreamYard link here.
Can you do that?
Yeah, I can. Okay, so guys.
Do you want me to tell some jokes?
Yeah, tell some jokes.
Man, I used to have a little catalog of jokes. I don't have them anymore.
So
we'll wait for some people to get on.
We're just waiting. Carl wants it for some reason. Wants it on the Messenger.
Okay.
So I'm going to try to do that. So you guys just hang with me here.
Hey,
look! The first picture pops up on Facebook. It's Garrett.
Yeah, I'm on. I'll talk about it while you look for this.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I got invited to be on a great podcast last night called Moss Football here in Oklahoma to talk about futsal, what I teach, and soccer. And it started at 9. We started recording at 9, and we recorded almost 3.5 hours. And half of that we spent talking about Bigfoots, aliens, spirits, simulation theory, string theory, and am I leaving anything out? Oh, UFOs. So it was pretty productive, I'd say. So when that drops, I'm going to put it on our Instagram and Facebook so you guys can go check it out. Give them some listens.
That is cool. So we'll get some new fans that way, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I heard you say something to your mom about having them on.
Yeah, well, they have some stories. Like we go into a couple of stories. So they've had paranormal experiences before. I was telling you about the one where he's flipping the quarter. It's kind of weird, isn't it?
That is. That is. So hang on. I'm still chatting with Carl.
Okay.
I saw your email, but it didn't display. Oh, there he is. Okay. So Carl Johnson. He has been investigating and report the strange phenomena for the past 49 years, beginning with his association with noted ghost hunting couple Ed and Lorraine Warren. We all know that, right?
Yes, we do.
As members of the Psychological that's reason you should read these Investigatory and Research Organization and a research team based at Rhode Island College in Providence. Carl and his identical twin brother Keith were called to investigate the Perron family situation in Harrisville, Rhode Island during August and September 1973. Now, we know that as the what house? The Conjuring house, right?
Yep.
So both Carl and Keith E. Johnson were featured on the first 2 seasons of the popular television series Ghost Hunters, which it was Grant. Now it's back to Jason. We're going to have to ask him about that off the air. Anyway, after leaving the show those 2 years to better pursue their own interests, Carl has numerous other television credits, including Paranormal State and A&E Network, The Haunted on Animal Planet, Finding Bigfoot. That's your stuff, man, right there.
Yeah.
A Haunting on Destination America, The Learning Channel and Travel Channel, The Exorcism Prayer, independent documentary by Ryan Cavanill, 2016, Walking with Shadow, independent documentary by Mike Ricksecker in 2021. Ghost Adventures on Travel Channel, Mysteries Decoded, love that show, on Travel Channel, and Fright Club on TV Channel, on the Travel Channel. My bad.
Man.
This guy's a legend, dude. Carl organizes an officiation. Now, see, there's a part of here I'm going to read, and it's just, I know I'm going to mess it up. So you know what? We all know who he is, right?
He's a legend.
He's a legend. Best demonologist out there. And let's go ahead and bring him on right now. There he is. Carl.
Hello there.
How are you, sir?
I'm well. I have a couple of physical issues with which I've been dealing, but I'm here. I'm well. I can speak and all.
Oh, well,
I can sing.
Thanks for showing up.
Oh, my pleasure. I love to be on your show. It's been some months. It's been like 4 months since I've been on your show.
Too long.
Yeah, something like that.
I enjoy it. You see, I'm in the archives, surrounded.
You are.
I actually am surrounded by archives.
Do you live there? Is that the?
I'm always.
You.
Yeah, I've got file cabinets and bookshelves every time you see me. No, this is the headquarters for the Johnston Historical Society in Johnston, Rhode Island, of which Elise Giammarco Carlson is president. She's also my partner in Panorama Paranormal.
Gotcha. Hey, we're getting an echo through your side. Can you turn the volume down on it, or will that mess you up?
I can do that. Yeah.
Hello. I still hear echo.
I don't hear it, but
we hear it on our side. Is what it is.
I'm turning it down, seeing if that helps.
Okay. If the best thing is if you have earbuds or something. Or when I talk, I just mute him. So I could just do this and mute him.
It's tedious, but if you need to.
Okay. Hello? Yeah. We'll just go.
Might have to look around for the earphones at this point, though.
Oh, no, don't worry about it. But if you turn the volume down, then you're going to hear us all, right?
At a certain point, I won't be able to now.
Okay. But are you good at reading lips?
Passable, yeah. Doesn't it make me sound kind of awesome, though, with an echo, like I've been in the demonic realm for so long?
Yeah.
Hello,
All right, here. What I'm going to do is you and I talked about, in fact, hang on, let me mute that. Okay, so what you and we talked about that episode, Zombie Boy, with Adam and Amy, who did the investigation. And so I want to show a little clip from that to my viewers who haven't seen it. And basically what this is, guys, is they were doing an investigation. They got a call about actually two different entities. One was kind of an evil thing happening in like a coach house or something outside of the property. And then one was just this kid, little boy that was, not causing a lot of evil stuff or anything, but his presence was known. And they just weren't getting a whole lot of, they went in and did some EVP sessions at first, and they just weren't getting anything. So let me see if I can share that so you guys be patient with me here. Let's see if I can get it going. Share screen. One day, Garrett, I'm going to learn this whole thing.
You're doing great. I don't know how you do all this.
Let's see. There it is. Okay. So let's share that. Let me go over to Zombie Boy. Okay, let me stop it right there for just a second. Let me tell you what they're doing. They decided that possibly this energy was just created by stories. So they decided they're just going to make up their own narrative about this Zombie Boy and give him a history. So that's what they're doing right now. So let's go ahead and continue. Okay, let me remove that.
And unmute Carl.
Yeah, and unmute Carl. So basically what I was going to tell everybody is what happened is they went back about maybe a few hours later with their K2 meter and their other stuff. And they started asking questions. They said, who is your mother? Who is your father? And every question was answered with the answers that they came up with. In other words, they said, who's your father? It said Edward. And they said, who is your mother? They said Beatrice. How old are you? Yeah, how old are you? And the K2 meter blinked 12 times. What else was there? What toy do you like to play with in the paranormal investigation? And they said K2 meter, and it clearly said K2 meter. If you want, you can look this up on it's on Discovery Plus. It's season 2, and the show's called Zombie Boy. So to me, this is I don't know, man. Carl, what are your thoughts on this? Because it's just like this changes things, kind of. It's somewhat groundbreaking, I think.
Okay, is my mic muted, or am I?
You're on.
Yep, you would mute it temporarily because of the echo effect.
Right.
Well, I think it's fascinating. It's beyond interesting. It's I wouldn't call it groundbreaking in the sense that they initiated it, because this mirrors an experiment that was first conducted back in 1973 by the Toronto Psychical Research Society, and that was groundbreaking. Now, the crew of Kindred Spirits, rather, they they emulated that experiment, for their purpose, with Zombie Boy, and but the premise comes from that first experiment those decades ago, which that was groundbreaking, and it's a case where the impossible happens, but it's very educational. It tells us something. It tells us that in essence, the spirit can be assembled or created or produced. We're not necessarily getting an entity from the spirit world. Our minds are forming it, or it could be a conglomerate. It could be that there is such an entity or spirit about, and if they construe a similar presence, like they fabricate a spirit, so to speak, and it's close enough to what was already there, maybe it calls it in. Maybe it strikes a resonant chord. We're not sure of the mechanics involved, but I think that is one of the most fascinating experiences or experiments with spirit communication that's ever been conducted, because it's really educational. It's more than just feeling, the departed are about us and they are watching and waiting to be spoken to and communicate with us. No, this shows that there are mechanics involved.
Right.
That the human psyche has the propensity to actually create the spirit that seems to have its own volition. I mean, it's an automaton in a sense. It didn't exist before they thought it up, and yet now it exists. This begs the question that once that spirit is produced, is created, does it still exist, or does it just evaporate? If it's not fed with energy and thought and attention.
And that brings up a good question. Don't you think that possibly when people are, when they move into a house and they go and they haven't conjured anything, and all of a sudden they have weird things happening, could this be residual energy from someone who did create something like this?
Okay, this is where my own thoughts come in. That what I call a substrate, it's my own term, is created through thought and energy and association. A spirit form is embedded into the very materials of which a building is created, or the land around it. Say, I'll give you an example. There's a house, the Sylvanus Brown House, on the grounds of historic Slater Mill. It's part of the campus. Well, that house, built in 1758, is host to a little girl ghost. She has been seen, and people describe the same kind of little girl, looks the same. I haven't seen her, but I've heard her a number of times. And other people hear her. They say what she's saying. Yep, that's her. That's what she says. That's her voice. And perhaps a child, and her name is Becca, because that's the name that was produced and printed on 6th audio recordings when we were communicating with her. And she said, Becca. Say that little girl, that presence, lived in that house. She embedded her presence just by living, just by being there. Her presence was encoded, so to speak, in the fabric of that building, into the wood, the mortar, the stone, the concrete. That's where Becca resides. She's a program. And under special conditions, that program becomes activated and projected. There we have our ghost girl. Now, whether she has her own consciousness on some level, whether she thinks, we can't say, but she seems responsive. Because in that house, that 1758 house, we had a group of ghost hunters. We actually had Long Island paranormal investigators were our guest. And that goes back some years. That goes back to, 2009. And they were one of the first paranormal groups to visit Slater Mill site, Slater Mill being the site of the American Industrial Revolution. And I was employed there for 14 years. And so the ghost hunting group from Long Island, New York is there. And I told them the story. I related the story of a woman who just the year before was touring the grounds of Slater Mill. And she looked up into a window, an outdoors window of the Sylvanus Brown House. It was a gambrel window looking out over the garden, the herbal garden. And this woman saw a little girl looking down at her. The woman looked back down at the herbal garden and cautiously looked back up. That child, that face was still looking down at her. And she was sincere. She said, I don't need any recognition from this. I just was waiting to share this with you. And I know she saw something up there. And, okay, I told the group from Long Island that story, as I told you. As soon as I related that, I was done speaking. All 7 of us in the room, in the kitchen, the colonial kitchen, all 7 of us clearly heard the laughter of a child. It was just coming out of the air, just coming out of everywhere in the room, no particular location. Just heard a girl, loud as anything, she's laughing. No one else was in that house. So I checked it. In fact, we had what you could call a diehard skeptic, a materialist, with us, who always looks for an empiric explanation. He was baffled by that. So sure. Becca heard us. Becca laughed at me talking about her being seen. Now, that's a child with a sense of humor, it sounded like a child's laughter. But that's a discarnate mind with a sense of humor. Now, that breaks all the rules, doesn't it? Now, that's not possible. But it happened. And it happened again. I mean, that's the loudest I ever heard her, but we've seen her, heard her. We people who have toured the building, I working there, have seen chairs be moved by an invisible force. So something was in that house, some aggregate of spirit. Now, this is all speculation and guess, but it did remind me of the Phillip experiment that was conducted in 1973. I even have a list of the researchers who were there and how they approached it. And what happened was this psychical research in Toronto, Ontario, they drew the outlines of an experiment where they would conduct a seance. And let me see, what was his name? Phillip is the ghost they conjured. There's a book called Conjuring Up Phillip. I don't recall the authors right now. And I see there was Dr. Joel Watson. It was actually designed by Dr. A.R. George Owen. His wife was there, Iris, and 8 people altogether. And this figure from the past, this historic figure, Phillip, what was his name? Let me see if I can get his name here. I'm looking it up. Let's see. Phillip committed suicide. That's it. Phillip Aylesford, or Aylesford is how you would pronounce it in English. Phillip Aylesford, and he was a nobleman, and he had a tragic ending to his life. He was married to Dorothy, but it was an unhappy marriage, and he began an affair. He fell in love with a Romani girl. The Romani girl was accused of witchcraft. Phillip did not come forward to defend her because that would have cost him at least his reputation, if not his life.
Right.
So she was burned at the stake for witchcraft, and I even have a year for that, 1624.
Wow.
Well, let me see. No, Phillip was born in 1624. He died in 1654 at the age of 30. He committed suicide. I remember my other readings, he'd flung himself off of a tower. That's how he committed suicide, out of grief because he dearly loved this Romani girl and did not come forward to try and save her. I don't think I would have either. And so he died at the age of 30. What makes this seance particularly interesting and different is that Phillip Aylesford did not exist. He was never a living person. Wow. He was concocted. They gave him this whole elaborate history, said where he lived and all that. And at the first seance, not much happened except the table at which they were seated rumbled a little bit. The second seance, conducted later in the week, they started to get raps on the table, a succession of raps that actually answered their questions, like 1 for yes, 2 for no, or maybe it was 2 for yes, 1 for no, but these raps were actually answering questions. They had a consciousness, something that was answering them. They had a bowl of candy set out for Philip. Sometimes pieces of those candy, pieces of candy were gone. Philip helped himself to them. There'd be a few pieces missing here and there. The researchers avowed, no, I didn't do that. They didn't do the seance in darkness. They conducted it in dim lighting. And I think they used candles at a couple of these seances at least.
So Philip,
this was so successful that they actually went on television talk shows and demonstrated Philip.
Wow.
Who was it? I think it was Sydney, who the bookkeeper, who said, "Oh, Philip," on a talk show, "Oh, Philip, we just made you up anyway." Of course, Philip stopped answering. It took months at least a month, I think a couple of months to coax Philip back, or the better part of 2 months to coax Philip back, get him to answer again, because they had offended him. Right. Now, this entity is behaving like a genuine person, and I think sometimes they almost forgot that they concocted Philip. But that was the whole purpose of their psychokinetic experiment. Actually, a parapsychological experiment, parapsychology dealing with ESP, extrasensory perception, survival after physical life after death. That's what ESP, that's what parapsychology is all about. And, propensities of the mind, of the human psyche. And apparently the psyche can do more than we gave it credit for, because it created this being. As I was saying earlier, begs the question, is Philip still there? I don't think he's been spoken to for a while. Or if another group of researchers initiates this experiment, restarts the experiment, are they going to get better results than if they made something up themselves? Are they going to tap into the Philip circuit and get him to respond? I'd start with Philip myself. Rather than
what do you make of that? I mean, it's is it possible there's this? Oh, hang on, let me get this. It's like I'm on a bad acid trip here. Okay, so now I can hear myself think.
Yeah, because my mind's blown right now.
It's I mean, Carl, it blows my mind. It's like, okay, so is it possible? Is it possible that a spirit could have heard the story, took on that persona, or is it actually they created this thing? I mean, it gave it life, gave it its own personality. What do you think about that?
Well, I'll quote a line from the movie Cool Hand Luke, starring Paul Newman.
Sweet.
I don't know, boss. We have two scenarios which you suggested. Did they tap into something, like strike a responsive chord, get something like Philip? Maybe there was a departed Philip and they just happened to hit on that. Or some nobleman who committed suicide in England in the 17th century, did they actually tap into that spirit? Or did they just make him, create him? You know what? I think both could be true. Even though the two answers they cancel each other out, but I think as a contradiction, and the paranormal research is full of contradictions, I think both could be true.
Now, is there a website where I can look that up?
Yes.
To read the whole case.
Yeah, I was trying to send it to you, but I couldn't find a send link to that. But it's called, my ever-efficient partner in paranormal research, Elise Giammarco Carlson, she sent me that link. So the Phillip Psychokinetic Experiment. And I'll try to get that to you. So you can read more. It has the basic details which I've related to you, but it names all the researchers, the 8 researchers involved, and says how long they were at that. Eventually, they moved on to other experimentation. I think they did some of the most valuable work in paranormal research, parapsychological research that has yet been engineered.
God, I wish I would have known now, because like you said, it's not groundbreaking really, because it was already figured out. But when I watched that episode, I'd never heard of this thing, and my mind was blown. I was up all night thinking this can pertain not to just spirits. But if you think about
Energy.
positive energy,
Yes.
manifesting money, manifesting love, manifesting, it's
Negative energy
Yeah,
even.
it's numerous.
Well, did you see me over here? Oh, can you hear me?
I'll meet you. I'm sorry.
Did you see me over here furiously writing while he was talking?
You wanted to ask Carl
Well,
something.
yeah, but I didn't. I mean, he answered everything I was writing down. He came full circle, and because the thing about it, he was talking about Becca, and he was saying, the spirit is embedded and encoded into the fabric of the house, is what he said, right? And so then I was going to ask, well, so if Becca was a person that lived there at one time, then can her free will re-access? Because he said it becomes like a portal.
That's a good question,
right? And so, but he answered it again. He said, I don't know, boss. It could, in his theory is that, or it could possibly be both.
I think if you gave energy to back, like he was saying, if someone was to contact Phillip, if we read that research and we got a good feel for it and we started doing it, I think we could make it happen.
And maybe Phillip can sometimes reactivate himself into that when he wants to, right? Is that?
Yeah, it's like creating a monster, kind of.
Yeah, can Phillip make his own decisions?
Right.
Obviously, Phillip has a sensitivity because when they said, we just made you up anyway, he quit for a while.
He was mad.
That is crazy.
He went on extended leave. He resigned until conditions were improved.
Here's a question.
Yeah.
What thoughts does Carl have about a piece of land? Hang on. I'll let you read it because everything's going on.
What thoughts does Carl have about a piece of land being haunted? We built a new home once, and the property had unexplainably terrible energy. Yeah. People can be haunted. Objects can be haunted. Why not land? In fact, especially land. There could be a confluence of factors involved. It may be on the crisscross of ley lines, which is an energy source, and that's a real phenomenon. There might have been some tragic events that transpired on that property, on that land, or significant. We think tragic if it's terrible energy, events. And sometimes a certain piece of property or a certain sector has a vibration to it, and we don't know why, except that I don't think these vibrations are static. I think they flux. I don't know what else to call them except a vibration, a charge, an energy. And I think that mutates and fluxes, and sometimes you just feel an ominous presence where you're walking or where your house is built. But it could be to something that happened there. And there's, of course, the old thing about Native American burial grounds. Don't build on Native American burial grounds because your house will be haunted. You're crying out loud, America is a Native American burial ground. That's why it's Native American.
Absolutely.
Indigenous peoples. And again, a couple of factors, a couple of answers. This presence, I felt it before. It moves around, it fluxes. It may not have been engendered by anything tragic that happened, like a war, like King Philip's War. There's the name again. King Philip's War was staged in New England, actually, most of it, and hostilities between the white settlers and the Americans. His actual name was Montanoma, and he had the Americanized name of King Philip, and he led an insurrection against the white settlers, which per capita was the bloodiest siege or series of sieges in American history. It still stands to this day. Took place between 1670 and 1672. The high point of it, of course, being 1671. Atrocities on both sides. No good, no right people, except Chief Anawan. He was a dignified man of age 80, and he voluntarily surrendered because he knew it was better for his people. I mean, it was a lost war on the Native American side anyway. And of course, King Philip and Chief Anawan were beheaded, and their heads were spiked on poles because that was a very English thing to do.
Yeah.
And this was New England. New England, yeah. So and they kept them on display for a year, which was, standard.
Stinky.
Yeah, stinky and standard. Standard stinky. But that's what they do. They put the heads on pikes. That was reserved for traitors. And they figured since this insurrection was threatening the burgeoning colonies, then that was insurrection. That was treachery, because they were officially British subjects because they lived on their native land.
Right.
And that was terrible atrocities. So maybe that's why when you ride through or drive through certain regions, certain areas of New England, so suddenly, George, don't park here. I don't feel right about this. It's something about the woods. I don't know. I don't like this place. I've heard that from people, and I've experienced it. In fact, my native state, where I'm speaking from, Rhode Island, and Providence, the capital of Rhode Island, has its own zeitgeist. It's got a feeling to it. It's not evil, but it's a little ominous.
Right.
People report that widely, tourists to Rhode Island. I mean, unless you go right to Newport and get on a sailboat or something, and then have delicious seafood. So then it's going to be a positive experience. But if you go to Rhode Island to visit, and you do enough sightseeing, and you go to where H.P. Lovecraft lived in Providence and wrote his horrific stories.
And you're related to him, right?
Yeah, actually, I am. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, so I don't have to. Yes, I am related. I'm a blood relation to H.P. Lovecraft. Of course, he didn't have any offspring, but I am second cousin twice removed to H.P. Lovecraft, which is pretty close.
That's cool.
I have a cousin living now that she's my second cousin, and I didn't discover that until I was doing research for an article on H.P. Lovecraft, because I was presenting a tribute to commemorate the 50th anniversary of Lovecraft's passing. And I thought, I was making a delivery at work, and I started thinking about Lovecraft. I kind of remembered he died in 1937. Then it was January 1987, and I thought, wow, to my knowledge, nobody's having any convocation, any tribute or mention of H.P. Lovecraft. Not that he was a heroic figure, but he was a significant author. So I said, nobody's doing anything about it. So I went to Providence Public Library on my lunch and started researching Lovecraft. I found a book by Elsbreg de Camp called Lovecraft at Last. And it was during that reading that I discovered, to my surprise and delight, that I'm actually related to H.P. Lovecraft. I had a genealogist do research, and it turns out I'm closer than I thought. A blood relation through 3 family lines. There's even something of a family resemblance. If I pulled my face down, if I could keep it like this.
Right there.
I don't have them to display. I could send them to you, Keith. Yeah, I could send them to both of you. I portrayed H.P. Lovecraft in an original play about H.P. Lovecraft because an author and playwright and teacher was at that tribute to H.P. Lovecraft I gave on March 15th, 1987, the actual 50th anniversary of Lovecraft's death. And he wrote a poem called At Lovecraft's Grave. This is Mr. Brett Rutherford, who now resides in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. But he wrote a play. After the poem, he was inspired to write a play, one act, but for one act is kind of lengthy, play about H.P. Lovecraft. And he asked if I would portray H.P. Lovecraft. I said, delighted to. Delighted. Yeah. But I was thinking, jeepers crow, I'm like, 30 years old. I can't remember lines like I used to. But plus my wife I was married at the time, and she was vehemently opposed to me performing this piece because she was a very religious person. Became more so. We were involved in a very strict church. Back then, I wouldn't call it a cult. I would now, but they had stringent strictures, and so my wife was saying, "You're honoring him. You're honoring a devil worshiper." I said, "No, he wasn't a devil worshiper. He wrote about devil worshipers. That doesn't make him one." Right. Well, he wasn't holy. I said, no, he was an atheist. He was an atheist? Well, that's better. I'm not lionizing him. I just want to play him, So she almost talked me out of doing it, but I'm very glad that I capitulated and decided to do it anyway, against her and the church's wishes. And it was a fantastic experience. Nobody remembers it. Virtually nobody remembers it now. But that was the talk of Providence, the Providence Center of Arts. Yeah, everybody was talking about the play about H.P. Lovecraft, which I was honored to perform. And I don't know how I remembered all that dialogue, but it was like a teleprompter in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I was so comfortable with it, nervous of the dress rehearsal, but I was so comfortable with that piece, that part, that I could actually ad-lib stage directions. That was always a beautiful. It was almost a comedy, but it had pathos to it, and that was my great achievement in the dramatic world, I think.
And that's been videotaped?
It has in Germany, because it has been performed. Where was it? Berlin or Dusseldorf? It was performed in Germany, and has been a radio play. And I've performed an excerpt of that for Necronomicon, which is an H.P. Lovecraft-inspired convention, which takes place in Providence, always held in Providence, every other year. And there's going to be one this year in August. I think I'm going to try and see if I can do some more of that play. Because when I did it when they had the Necronomicon in the year 1913, they unveiled the bust of H.P. Lovecraft, which was given to the Providence Athenaeum Library, very old library. That's where Edgar Allan Poe used to romance Sarah Helen Whitman. And we actually performed, I think, about 20 minutes of the play, Night Gaunts. And
cool.
I remembered my lines. It was good.
Wow.
It was good. Now, I did the voices. I don't mean to rabbit trail too much. That isn't the subject of our show, but when you talk about Lovecraft, I do. And what I wanted to do differently was when we performed that play first in 1988, I used my theater voice so everyone could hear me properly, But I projected my, deep resonant voice, and actually I'd found that H.P. Lovecraft did not have a deep voice. He had a rather high-pitched and erudite sounding voice, and I said, oh, how can I do, there's no recording because H.P. Lovecraft destroyed the 2 records he made, Singing Yankee Doodle Dandy, he got, he didn't like his voice, so he threw them away. But so we don't really know except by description of what H.P. Lovecraft sounded, how he sounded, and I figured he had the high-pitched voice, and he was, he would have something of an affectation sounding, like an intellectual, and brought up in Rhode Island, raised in Providence, Rhode Island. So we had him speaking somewhat like this, as he would have been speaking, I think, like more like that, but with that Rhode Island accent, you leave out the R's and things, and it would have been, but he was very, very self-educated, but very, very erudite, so I think he would have known. So that's the voice I did for H.P. Lovecraft, and I would love an opportunity to play him again.
That's
cool.
cool.
Can you read it real fast?
Okay, yeah, let me read this. Sorry.
I was going to say,
Okay,
I think we might need to go to Rhode Island in August for the H.P. Lovecraft convention.
We should.
Oh my God, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Uh,
All right, I got a question for you. Okay, I'm muting you, so if you say something, I'll read your lips. Okay, so we touched on, we talked about the Perron house, and we touched on energy a little bit about that, when Ed and Lorraine came in. And I remember you said you and Keith and the other investigators, you really didn't feel anything evil there. And again, I'm not saying anything bad about Ed and Lorraine, but as soon as they came in with the dramatics and the Bathsheba and all this evil kind of stuff started happening, you believe that's because they kind of conjured that up? You're unmuted.
I'm just doing that.
I know.
I just wanted to see you get a little frantic there. I have thought this. I heard about the Phillip Experiment. By the end of the year that was done, so that was 1973. But I don't think I knew about the Phillip Experiment then. But even early on, when I was 17 and 18 years of age, I had this theory that thought imprint could actually produce parapsychic results. So I didn't invent it, but I had thought of it. And I thought this combination. You have this old house, 1736, just 100 years after Roger Williams founded the city of Providence. So you have the 1736 house, old farmhouse, births and deaths transpiring in that house. It has the reputation for being haunted, eerie feeling to the property. Then we have the Perrons move in, Roger and Carolyn and their 5 daughters. And Carolyn has visions, psychic visions. Now, at no time did I say that house is not haunted. It is.
Right.
It was and it is. However, subject to paranormal phenomena. But you've got impressionable Carolyn, who other people might hear raps on the wall, or hear footsteps descending the stairwell. So it's kind of eerie, old house, settling. But other persons, such as Carolyn and her husband Roger and the 5 girls, especially Carolyn having visions there, that's going to be something altogether different. This house is haunted, it's malevolent. There's, we have a whole other society, disembodied residents in this house. And I'm trying to say this, delicately, because I don't want to make it. I never say she was delusional. I say she was impressionable. And 5 daughters, of course. So you've got things genuinely happening there. So I thought
people can have fear, and that doesn't mean they're insane. It's just it causes that.
Fear is palpable. Fear
Absolutely.
produces things. I used to be scared to death and to stay overnight at my grandfather's house because I don't know what did it. They said it was the radiator, but every time we stayed there in the steps, you would hear the steps going up to the upstairs bedrooms. You would hear, I'd stay overnight there. My brother and sister and I, when my parents were out square dancing, so we had to stay overnight with Grampy, and for the life of me, it sounded like somebody coming up those stairs. And all I could picture was that door opening and some hag-like face looking in, I think it was making those steps. I think our fear was doing that because, gas radiators don't ascend the staircase.
Right.
And I think you had a cauldron of influences. Look at this. You have already haunted activity happening in that house. You had Carolyn having visions and seeing spirits and being haunted by some kind of malevolent witch. And even before she was named Bathsheba. And you've got these prominent paranormal investigators, Ed and Lorraine Warren, coming there by dint of me. Were it not for me, they would not have been in that house. And I can honestly say, were it not for me, none of the movies, the Conjuring and the James Wan pictures and the Conjuring 2 and 3 and Annabelle, they would not have been produced. But that's just through a series of happenstance and domino effect because, I essentially brought Ed and Lorraine there, and our group based at Rhode Island College, P.I.R.O, Parapsychological, Investigatory, and Research Organization. So I'm not really taking credit. I am saying I was pivotal in that none of this would have happened if it weren't for me. And I'm the most pivotal character in that, actually producing the Conjuring.
Yes.
It's not that I sat at a drawing board and said, I know they're going to make a movie out of this 40 years later. No, but
without you and Keith, this thing would have never happened.
Exactly, because in April, I think it was April 17th, 1972, my brother and I attended a lecture based at, as I say in my biograph, a lecture based at the Rhode Island College in Roberts Hall, presented at Roberts Hall, featuring the paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. Now, Ed did some audience participation, Ed Warren. He started to ask questions. He said, who here has ever played on a Ouija board? So I'm looking around like, 17-year-old Carl, very well dressed and handsome back in those days, and bygone era. Has anybody ever seen a ghost? Has anyone ever performed a magic ritual?
Both hands.
Both hands.
So Ed says, "Young man, could you come up here, please? You should have seen the face of my brother Keith." He's like, when I'm walking up there, I became part of the lecture. I was just going to it, and I became part of that lecture.
Now, did Keith stay seated, or did
Keith stayed seated? Keith had nothing to raise his hand over. Except Keith did have paranormal experiences in my parents' house.
Right.
So he might have like raised his hand to that. But I was the one who raised my hand 3 times. So Ed Warren calls me up there. Ed and Lorraine did. Ed was the spokesman. And so because of that, the members of the group at Rhode Island College, under the auspices of Rhode Island College, P.I.R.O. Well, after that lecture, I was surrounded by about 12 or 14 females. You know, you're an interesting person.
Groupies.
Those were my first groupies ever. And I don't know where they are now, but they're not around me. Those were my first groupies. And no, they're asking for my autograph, these people. And I just got up there and spoke. And I was invited that night. 2 members of this group, P.I.R.O, approached me and said, "Listen, we'd love if you could come to our next meeting. It's going to happen next week." So I was only 17. I was still in high school, but I came to the meeting of P.I.R.O. Immediately, I was a member of P.I.R.O, invited to join. Of course, where I went, Keith went, so I'm not going to leave Keith out. Keith joined. And Keith, I brought Keith to the meeting, and he was invited to join. That's why I was the most pivotal and central character. It's debated as to who actually conceived of calling in Ed and Lorraine Warren, but several members of our team, including myself, knew of Ed. We're acquainted with Ed and Lorraine. I'd been in touch with them. I lectured with Ed and Lorraine. And when they came to the Conjuring house, it wasn't called that then, I investigated with Ed and Lorraine. So I knew them quite well. I remember going out to what was then a gravel driveway in September 1973 and welcoming Ed and Lorraine to that house in Harrisville, Round Top Farmhouse, which P.I.R.O had been investigating for a month, maybe almost 2 months previous. We were there for 2 months. And this group, P.I.R.O, and myself included, we were conducting what, to the best of our means, was a scientific investigation. We were documenting, we were photographing, we were green, we were, lost equipment and, documents. And so we only have a dearth of evidence from that first series of investigations, the first collective investigation of that house. But we were going at it as we thought we should. Empiric evidence, measurements, photographs, climate conditions, interviewing Carolyn, what's happening when she sees ghosts, what's her state of mind, what's her state of being, And once the Warrens superseded us, see, Ed and Lorraine Warren came, walked through the house. I helped with Carolyn give the tour. Very, very much an honor for me. I said, wow, we're really making it now as a team because we are working with Ed and Lorraine. I remember speaking to Ed Warren over the phone. I said, now it's my understanding we're going to be investigating this house together. Oh, absolutely. Because Ed invited himself to come over, he and Lorraine. Well, that was the last time we were to see the Perrons for a while.
Yeah.
The last time I would see any members of the Perron family for precisely 40 years until the release of the Conjuring movie. We didn't hear back from Carolyn Perron. Carolyn was calling me every day, updating me on what was happening in her house. And she became like a friend of mine, just talking on the phone sometimes. Well, suddenly we ceased hearing from Carolyn. We held a meeting of our team, P.I.R.O, and we decided, well, either the Warrens are helping them and they're in a very serious situation. They need their time with the Perrons, or it's cleared up and they don't need us and need any paranormal intervention anymore. So, we just got to let it go. So I think it was 16 days, that I didn't hear from Mrs. Perron. Then she called, apologized for having been out of touch, and she told me that the Warrens told her and her husband Roger that the Warrens could be of no assistance unless they were the sole paranormal investigators there. That we were just a bunch of college kids. We could only get in the way. So that's how we lost out on the Perron case, but I don't regret it. We had our time with them.
Right.
Our case manager of the time, Donna, she's She doesn't feel good about that, and I can understand. Donna will say, I'm sorry they're gone, but I could never forgive Ed and Lorraine for stealing our case. With some justification. I just don't have any emotional connection to it now. But it was all amazing back then. So that's how we got to know the Perrons and became involved in that house. But it was our first residential case, and it was a big one.
Whoa.
Now, had Ed and Lorraine not been there, it would have been another haunting for a case log. But it became famous and exaggerated for the movie, But I certainly don't regret investigating there. It was quite a time.
So
Still
I
miss
can't
that.
remember if I let me meet you again. Okay. Yeah. So, there's that part where they're doing the seance, and I guess Nancy, that's her name, I think. Miss Perron was flipped backwards in this chair and all this stuff happened. Now, did this really happen, or is this just part of Hollywood?
Well, Nancy was one of the daughters. There's Nancy, Judy, April, and let's see, Carolyn was the mother.
That's what I meant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Carolyn was the mother. But yeah, that actually did happen. I'm convinced because I've spoken to enough eyewitnesses to that. Now, Andrea Perron was the oldest daughter. I got to know her quite well. And she wrote that series of books, House of Darkness, House of Light. And, what really did happen, and I get this from several sources, so I've been able to put the full picture together. Now, Mrs. Warren, whom I miss, and, she was a wonderful part of our lives back then, and many people's lives. Mrs. Warren would advise people not to do seances. You must never attempt to contact the dead. But her standard mode of operation was her modus was to perform seances. And so what better way to try and quell a haunting,
right,
a virulent haunting, than to have a seance and call the spirits in? It just seemed a little contradictory at the time. Now, this was shortly after we had ceased contact, or the parents had ceased contact with us, with our team. So it took place on October 30th, 1973. A seance was arranged. Present were Carolyn Perron, Lorraine Warren, Ed Warren, a psychic medium who was an acquaintance who worked with Mrs. Warren, and a priest, an ordained Catholic priest. And Roger came in later. Roger came home he worked for a silver distributor. And Roger came home and found all these people in their living room, in their parlor, sitting around a table with candles lit. So he wasn't too pleased, was Roger. He was a little more pragmatic about things. And I just said, well, they're here. Let's let them do their thing and see if it helps. Because Carolyn was going through quite a situation. All right. The seance is initiated. The psychic medium, is receiving a spirit. Now, this was Bathsheba Sherman's spirit. Oh, so they said. We must keep in mind that Bathsheba Sherman was a real person, but totally innocuous. There is the Black Book of the town of Burrillville. Some towns have what they call the Black Book, and outstanding events and deaths were recorded in the Black Book. If there was hoof and mouth disease or whatever they called it back then, that was recorded in the Black Book. If somebody died by suicide, or committed murder, that was in the Black Book. There is no mention of Bathsheba Sherman in the Black Book. Historically, she was a neighbor. She had probably been in the house, but she didn't live there. And she was, if anything, eccentric because she made medicines, but, totally unremarkable person. The Perrons, when they lived in Cumberland before Harrisville, Rhode Island, their dog that died I believe, was killed in the road. And unfortunately, some of the children witnessed that. But their dog was named Bathsheba. Okay. Bathsheba is an exotic sounding name. It's from the Bible.
Right.
David's wife and King David's wife. So they have this seance, and Lorraine Warren had a vision of the demon witch Bathsheba. After our case manager, Donna, had told her that there was somebody named Bathsheba buried within a mile. Bathsheba Sherman, Thayer Sherman. So get back to the seance. The medium, the psychic medium, who has also heard of Bathsheba Sherman, starts channeling Bathsheba Thayer Sherman. We don't know. That's what's coming out of her mouth.
Right.
Then Carolyn is taken over, and Carolyn starts gibbering and uttering syllables that are incomprehensible. She's like she's speaking in tongues. She just starts murmuring. I'm sure Carolyn genuinely was taken over. She was not staging that by any means. Then Carolyn's body is suddenly and inexplicably propelled out of her chair, flies across the room 9 feet. They showed me how far before her body hit in the next room. She's thrown 9 feet away. She was unconscious on the floor. People thought she died. Meanwhile, the priest is terrified, and he's up against a wall trying to get out of there. You know, what can he do? This was not covered in seminary.
Yes.
You know, there's no homily that's going to calm that down right there. And Carolyn is unconscious on the floor. Her husband went over there to help her, see if she was even living, breathing. And unfortunately, regrettably, Ed Warren stood next to him, kind of blocking him, and said, "You must never touch the possessed." Wrong thing to say at the wrong time.
Yeah.
Because Roger came up and belted Ed. And when he tells the story, which he frequently does, Roger will say, "Yeah, I think Ed lost that tooth." You know, I mean, it was an acrimonious ending to their association. And I think the Warrens meant well in doing this. But once they came into the case, it ceased being an investigation and became an intercession. There was no more scientific, because Lorraine pronounced that as a demon infestation. Mm-hmm. They were haunted by and being terrorized by the demon witch Bathsheba Thayer Sherman. And, it became fantastical. And Roger Perron ordered the Warrens out of the house, everybody out of the house. No more paranormal investigators in this house. So therefore, of course, we couldn't come back either. Well, we knew we were out of that case anyway. So it ended badly. And I'm not telling a horror story. I'm not faulting anybody. Well, it is kind of a horror story, but that's how they ended their association. Although Ed Warren did conduct an interview with Carolyn Perron 2 days later, which is kind of strange. November 1st, I think it was November 1st he did. I don't know why did that happen? Did he come back to the house? Why did Carolyn consent? Did Roger know about it? Roger must have. So that's kind of strange that he was able to interview Carolyn at length. But it was a very leading, if you hear the recording, which you can hear the recording of that, it's a very leading interview. Ed Warren will say, "Now, your name is Carolyn Perron, and you called me in to help you." "Yes." "We are here at your request. Is that right?" "Yes." And that's how the interview begins. And the whole thing is kind of leading. And I'm just giving a very objective account of this based on eyewitness testimony and what I've seen and heard in that house. I'm not criticizing anybody.
And keeping with what we're talking about, I mean, again, like I said, didn't you and Keith, when you first did the initial investigation, you found weird things happening, but you said you didn't really feel anything evil or that was trying to hurt anybody. Is that right?
It was similar to the paranormal activity that was transpiring in my parents' house where I was living at the time. I mean, we had strange stuff going on in my parents' house, but most days were business as usual, and sometimes strange things happened. Sometimes you'd hear the thundering, reverberating raps on the ceiling, or I saw a spirit in my parents' house, and you'd have things move around. Suddenly it would turn icy cold in a room for no apparent reason. I think it was happening more in the parents' house, not at a higher level, but more frequently.
But when things kind of got evil or she got pushed backwards and everything, that was after Ed and Lorraine came in and started their nonsense with the Bathsheba and all these things, which could have created this negative energy that started happening in the house.
Well, that's what I thought even back then. I think paranormal researchers, parapsychologists, are going more over to that way of thought that these things can be produced or, brought in and augmented. And,
How did you feel when you went back to the house? I know you went back years and years.
Yep.
Years later.
Well, I did some years later because there was going to be an independent movie filmed there, but that didn't happen. I went back there for that and met the successive owner, Norma Sutcliffe, a very delightful lady, and her husband, Jerry, or her partner, Jerry, resided there then. And my brother came, and with his group, New England Anomalies Research, NEAR, of which I was a member at the time, we did a paranormal investigation there at Norma Sutcliffe's house, that same house.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting investigation because while nothing bad happened, my brother recorded an EVP, electronic voice phenomena. My brother had his trusty recorder with him, and digital analog recorder. He was walking up the narrow stairs, and you hear this. When he played back his recording, the voice says, "We're still here."
Oh, wow.
And I made a joke. One of our investigators, Russ, was downstairs in the basement. And Norma, the house owner, said, where's your other fellow? And I said, oh, he's down in the basement relieving himself. He had to go. I made a joke. And my brother plays back the recording, and you hear me say, oh, he's downstairs. He had to relieve himself. He had to go. And this sibilant voice says, don't lie. It's true. My brother has the recording. I don't have it with me, but my brother has the recordings. And yeah, so there was some energy there, something captivated there. But I thought you've got this, like I said, a cauldron. You've got Carolyn with her sensitivity, or receptivity. Let's put it that way, receptivity. You've got these famed paranormal ghost hunters, paranormal investigators, we call them, coming in, and Lorraine Warren, handling the Amityville horror. You've got the Warrens coming in, you've got Carolyn, you've got Roger, you've got the 5 daughters, you've got strange things happening there. Yeah, I think a lot of that, I think the raw material was kind of put together into this virulent haunting. It manifested itself. It took on a life of its own. Right. If it was a different family there, I think they would have heard the bumps in the night. Yeah, but I wouldn't have been to that level, and the Warrens wouldn't have been called in. And Lorraine had her psychic vision there.
Now you know Chip Coffey, right?
Yes, I do. I haven't seen him in a few years, but yeah, I've investigated with Chip.
I
like Chip.
One interesting thing on that episode is there's 2 entities in his house, supposedly. One's a zombie boy, one's this evil dude. So they go down there and they start investigating. He said, well, let's bring Chip on. It was during the COVID thing, so they had him on the phone. And they said, Chip, what are you reading on here? And he started reading a couple of things on the evil entity. Then he said, well, I'm getting also someone named Edward. He was in the Civil War. So he was actually picking up on the fake story that
from the other room.
Yeah, that Adam and Amy had came up with. And that just blew my mind as well.
Yeah, that's fascinating as heck to me. Phillip Aylesford was, the fictional Philip. He was involved in the English Civil War because they put him at that time, under Lord Protector Oliver Cromwell. So they had an elaborate history for him. And I think the more complex you make the fabricated spirit's history, the more real it's going to become because you believe in it more. That's something. I mean, saying that they're assuming that they're on the up and up, with that television series, which I think they are.
Yeah.
I wasn't there for it, but not everything you see on these paranormal series is really authentic.
Yeah,
but
I know.
Sometimes things are nudged a little bit.
Sure.
But no, I think that was a genuine, bona fide, successful experiment with Adam and Amy. Granted, they were trying to help somebody, but I think they had a very interesting thing going. It replicated the Phillip experiment, and I'm glad they did that.
Yeah,
I have yet to see the episode. I want to.
About the early experiment that you were talking about, and even Chip said, "Guys, this is groundbreaking." And then they started thinking, we've got to really watch how we investigate. If we come in and start repeating all these stories that these people are saying and it's just fabrication, then we're just egging this whole thing on and bringing up these spirits that don't even exist. It's just energy. So it to me is like, wow, that was really fascinating. Especially that chip picked up on it. That was weird.
Yeah, that's the success, I'd say, they scored with that. It's the way that if somebody has an ominous feeling in the home, and Ed Warren was supposedly very accomplished at detecting demonic spirits, detecting demons.
Right.
The homeowner says, well, yeah, we find it interesting. You never know what's going to happen next. We'd like it to go away, but maybe it won't. Or if you have somebody saying, what is it? What do you want from us? This is our home. Isn't that going to kind of inflame it? Yeah, isn't that going to make things happen more? It's not going to chase it away, because you're playing the demon's game at that point. Demon can be a construct.
What's your thoughts on the Amityville house? Now, of course, I think everybody in the world who's a paranormal person has seen that one clip of Lorraine going, this is the most evil house I've ever set foot in. But yet there's a lot of people who've resided in that house. They said there's absolutely nothing going on. But do you feel that's actually haunted, maybe?
I don't think it's haunted. I don't think it was haunted. It's an opinion. It's kind of a red flag when you've got people who are subjective, such as Ed and Lorraine Warren, leading the investigation and the research into that house, such as it is. I don't think it was. However, there's usually a caveat to all these pronouncements. I met George Lutz. Kathy was ill at the time. She passed away shortly later, Kathy Lutz. And George told me, he said, if I'm making a living at this, it's not much of one, because I make very little money lecturing about this house and about what was our house. And, and I just have no advantage in doing this, really, or very little income from it. So George seemed sincere.
Yeah.
If I had to adjudicate it, really, I would say something happened there. It was strange, but not to the point that we would throw them out. I think they were in over their heads as a financial investment. They had to get out of the house. It was very nerve-wracking to be there because of the strange happenstances there, augmented by the bizarre history of that house. And
I think you just basically had Ronnie DeFeo, who was a mentally ill guy who went through the house and killed his parents. I mean, it wasn't demons. He was just a nut job. And
again, it's another cauldron.
Right. And so you had that kind of energy. But of course, like we were talking, I'm sorry, I got you muted. Hang on. Okay.
No, I was just echoing what you were saying anyway, that you've got this cauldron of bizarre circumstances. And actually, Ron DeFeo, he resembled George Lutz. There was a physical resemblance. That was played up in the movie. But you look at pictures of them, I see it. I see they looked alike. So strange things were happening, and they decided they had to relinquish their investment. I think there's a germ of truth to the hauntings.
Yeah.
But probably not.
There was a rumor for a long time, I don't know if you heard about it, that George Lutz had actually made the whole thing up. He admitted to it because, he, like you said, he was in over his head trying to make money. Did you ever hear this or verify any of that? Or
yes.
Okay. What do you think?
I've heard it. I didn't verify it.
When you talked to him, did he ever say anything like, I just made this stuff up, man?
No, he was still saying that's what happened. He was. It's just a very affable fellow to speak with. I didn't sense any pretense with him, but I didn't sense any pretense. But I think it was fabricated, yeah. But I think an old house like that with that kind of history, some things had to have happened. Even if they saw shadows coming down the stairwell, they couldn't stand being there anymore, knowing what happened. Maybe they thought they could handle it and couldn't, financially and psychologically. So they had to bail.
Hey, I was just going to make one point.
Oh, hang on there. Okay.
I love how earlier
I'm getting
you're
better
like,
at this.
Earlier you're like, I feel like I'm on an acid trip.
Yeah.
Well, I just thought it was interesting what you had said earlier about the radiator at your grandfather's house, and about how for you that fear, like the radiator itself wasn't climbing down the stairs to come get you, right? That was the fear. And so with the Amityville house, it sounds like they got in their head, over their head, like in a vision kind of way, right? With what happened, but also financially. So the stress in there, that's why I mentioned earlier, the cauldron, it could be a number
all
of
those different things.
Yeah. That all that fear, all of a sudden those noises become something that they're actually not. It's just their perception. Right.
Right, but again, if we're going by this experiment, like even Carl saying here in the radio, if he gave that enough
Exactly,
energy, and gave it
becomes something.
Enough attention to it, then
so the Lutz family
could create a ghost.
Right, the Lutz family could have had an experience that we're not having because we're not in that situation, right? Where that fear actually manifests itself into something that's crazy and affecting.
Oh
you.
yeah,
So
absolutely,
that's wild.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, you got that same principle there. That like the Becca haunting at old Slater Mill site. You know, she was real and yet she wasn't. What happens is we have this collection of phenomena. You know, things are happening. They're strange. We can't explain them. Then they become personified. They have a personality, a look. Somebody's seen the apparition. They have a name, as in Becca had that name attached to her. Suddenly we have her. We have the ghost. We know who she is. We don't know her origins. Someone did research into the background of the house, and there was a Rebecca who lived in that house, but she passed on when she was 80 years of age. So, you know, we don't know. A child may have been there for some time, and of course, not necessarily have been recorded. People like to think that she was a mill girl, you know, a little girl who was working in child labor, was working in Slater's mill. And that maybe she died there, died of some sickness, more prevalent at the time. But Becca was without a doubt real. She became real.
Right.
Whether she was the ghost of a child or something that we just wouldn't let go, I don't know. I know somebody had seen a little girl there before I started, you know, my employment there. And then you had the lady who saw the little girl looking out at her. Becca, in essence, was born. Other people wandering the grounds. Isn't that something that somebody can be a paranormal investigator for 10 years and, you know, just maybe hear some banging on a table or raps on a wall but not see a ghost? And then people walking around there for the first time see a ghost looking out the window. Lucky.
Yeah.
But Becca had a name. She had a personality. She was a happy child. She wasn't heard weeping. She was always heard laughing or giggling or going, wee, wee. That's how I knew some middle school class, girls class from Barrington, like 14, 15 years old. And they were in the Sylvanus Brown house, Becca's house. And this is, you know, of course, part of Slater Mill. They're on an educational history tour. And the girls, when I appeared in the kitchen, they said, "We're hearing a voice down here. We're hearing a voice. We're hearing someone. Sounds like a child." So I said, "Oh, yeah, they heard it's haunted. You know, so they got to say that." And they're young ladies. So I said, "Oh, what did you hear, girls?" I said, "People have heard things here. What did you hear?" They said, "We hear, wee, wee." By gum, that's what Becca says. Nobody told them that. They wouldn't have known that. So, yeah, they were hearing Becca. All right, my little Becca. I miss her. I think Becca followed me, though. There was only one time that I had any phenomenon follow me from the Slater Mill campus. You know, people are always worried about attachments. Well, it was October 2018. I was conducting a tour at the Slater Mill. We had 5 people with us, a family, and 6 with myself. One was a little baby. And these people, nice, bright, sunny day, and we're in the 1758 Sylvanus Brown house, also called Memory Cottage, appropriately. And we are in the what you could call the receiving room. And in the kitchen, all of a sudden we heard this strange voice. You know. Now, I have to back up a little bit. I started a ghost tour program at the evening tours, I called it, at Slater Mill. We're having people always asking me if it's haunted because they see things moving and they see shadow figures, so why not make it into a program? And it became a very popular program at Slater Mill. And that was a home run. And while I was having a ghost tour, we went into all three buildings on the campus, and I invited two ladies. One was middle-aged, and the other was a younger lady. I invited them to go down to the kitchen. I wanted two of them for safety issues, also they could corroborate if anything happened. So why don't you two women go downstairs to the kitchen for a while. We'll take some turns, people going down there. Well, the rest of us stay up. The rest of the group stays upstairs, guest. And about 2 minutes later, they came upstairs, white-faced, these two women, because they said they heard a witch's cackle. And they heard I've heard that before, a latch, rattling strangely down there, like someone's trying to get in the door from outside. And they said they heard a witch's cackle. Well, I never heard that before. Heard of a little girl giggling, but I've never heard of the witch's cackle. So later that month, it's still October, and I'm giving a tour in the Sylvanus Brown house, and we're in the receiving room with the fireplace. I'm going on my history spiel and my narrative, and from the next room, from the kitchen, what do we hear? So I can't really sound like it did, but I was like,
sounds like my cat.
Yeah, it was like cat-like, but it had that AVP, audible voice phenomenon, had that spirit voice quality where it just stopped. You see, when we speak, we have a little echo after our speech, and we're so accustomed to it, we really don't notice it. But this just stopped like in a vacuum, and then it stops. And of course, I guessed her, like, what is that? I said, oh, this is what I was talking about. I said, that was a strange. It sounded like someone trying to articulate words, trying to form something, but not quite being able to. Okay, and Slater Mill goes out of business because we relied on our guests in the school groups, and then COVID hits. Also, the National Park Service acquired Slater Mill, so I was out of that position, as was everyone else. And okay, so you go ahead to spring of 2020 was, yeah. And at that time, I was done with Slater Mill, and Slater Mill was done with us. So I went for a hike in the woods, meditative hike, and I was driving back, and I remember taking the corner from Rocky Hill Road onto Elmdale Road in North Situate. That was my hometown. I'm in my car, and I wasn't thinking of spirits or anything. Right next to me, and I could tell where it was coming from, in the passenger seat next to me. What did I hear? But I heard the same thing. Made my day. And I'm like, oh, Lord. And acoustically, it was strange because it didn't. Sorry, I keep rocking your camera.
No, you're fine.
But what I think was that spirit, Becca, whatever, was trying to speak. We wonder what spirits try to do in the afterlife, how they try to contact us. I think it was trying to enunciate words, but could not really form them, was just limited, could not do that. But it was quite clear, just not, intelligible. There's a principle called quantum entanglement, quantum physics. It was developed by Nathan Rosen and Albert Einstein, I believe 1915, thereabouts. Quantum entanglement talks about particle excitement, which is a big part of quantum speculation. That one particle or one piece of existence can excite another particle.
Right.
In unison, because particles sometimes get excited, but it can do it simultaneously and regardless of distance. Usually that distance, when it's been measured, it's infinitesimally small, much like a portion of a micron distance. And the two will vibrate and affect each other. In theory, that could happen if they're the distance of two planets. The distance shouldn't make a difference with that. I think the spirit was trying to locate whatever kind of consciousness it had, was trying to locate me because I was the spirit guide. I was the spirit guy who would speak to them, and bring attention to the ghosts at Slater Mill. And I think and I had befriended Becca. I spoke to her. Hey, Becca, how you doing? Tell her my problems. And I think whatever this was, tried to find, it located me like a sensor, like LiDAR, and came down at me and over to me and found me and tried like heck to talk. Like, I think its message was, I exist. I know you. Mm-hmm. Where have you been? And it hasn't happened since. I wish I could say I had this communication going on with her. I don't know if it knows what I'm saying now, but talk about, do these things still exist afterwards? I think it had a consciousness, a cognizance to it, and tried to find me, and it did. First thing I did was tell my partner Elise about it, but I wish she was there to hear it, but I couldn't wait to call her and tell her, I said, I got something to tell you. And I told her that night. Becca found me. I don't know what else to say. Centered in on me, found me, and it took that long and got me. Why not since, though? I don't know. I've told the story a number of times.
That's it.
But hopefully she'll come back. I'd love to hear that again. I don't have proof of it. The only thing is I apparently have high credibility because I don't tell all fantastic stories. They're just the ones I tell are true. And sometimes I have witnesses to corroborate. Often I don't. But I just heard that voice so clear. Now, if I was going to fabricate a story, I'd say, and there was this little girl in the seat next to me. She looked and she had no eyes. I swerved the car. No, I just heard that sound, the same sound I heard in the old house.
Wow, but I mean, probably okay. No, I was saying like with Becca, for instance. But if you put all your energy for days into thinking about her and put that energy into Becca, don't you think she probably would show back up again? We should try that.
Yeah, start with someone that's tried and true. Because I thought about Becca a lot. I wasn't thinking of her that day, but yeah.
But why do you start thinking about her all the time for like a week or two, and then you start like you drive her, talking to her? I bet you that energy would wake up.
Well, I used to tell the guests at Slater Mill, the guests of the evening tours, I would say, because we always had a good experience trying to speak to Becca. Sometimes we'd hear her voice. Sometimes she'd rap in like response to us, and our raps. And I said, and sometime we'll have a birthday party for Becca. Translate seance, and one lady. I am getting teary-eyed thinking about this. Such sincere people would attend those ghost hunts and this, evening tours. And a woman came in with an old-fashioned looking doll, like a straw and cloth doll. And she said this because she had heard Becca's voice when she was there. We all did in the room. And she brought a doll with a straw hat. She said, "This is Rebecca." Wow. I could cry thinking of that. I don't know where it is now, if it's still in that house, but I would bring that out for all the ghost hunts, for all the paranormal investigations at Slater Mill, because that was an emblem for Becca. That was her trigger object.
Right.
And a little girl should have a doll. I miss her. I don't know if she was real, but I miss her.
Yeah, I think we should do it. You should just think about her all the time.
Yeah, well, I did say she was real. In that sense, she was. Yeah.
I think because you say she's real, then she becomes real.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it works like the experiment they did.
I think it could. Well, I should go back to that house because even mentally, that's what I associate her with. I used to drive back alone from Slater Mill when I was living in Woonsocket, Rhode Island, and be driving back from the ghost hunts, and it was always a good experience. And in my mind, I used to play this BRU station from Brown University, and student radio, and they would have some freaky music on that sometimes. And I was looking at the spooky music. Well, like this electronic music, and very redundant, but for long, long minutes. Like you'd have a half an hour of the same strain. Like one song's that's eerie stuff, and I would, in my mind, I'd picture if I saw Becca there, and I'd be dancing with her. Suppose she liked to dance. Maybe in her little frock dress, she'd like to dance with me. I pictured things like that, like if she appeared to me and I said, "You want to dance?" She used to do things like open and close doors. So I'm personifying her now, too. And I think she knew me. But I remember one time it was actually an experimental ghost hunt with the staff. And I was just about to enter my code, the security code, into the panel. And it was on the top of the stairs that went down to the kitchen, narrow stairs. And I was just about to enter my code. All of a sudden I heard two heavy footfalls, like somebody stomping, a foot away from me. Bump, bump. And I said out loud, I had my hand poised, and I was like, "I want to see something. I'm not sure I want to see it right now." I turned and looked, nothing there. But oh boy, was that dramatic, because it was so definite. The place was haunted. And I found out that Slater Mill site was haunted. I didn't go there saying, "Oh, I wonder if these creepy old buildings are haunted." No, I didn't know anything of the kind. There were unique spirits in each of the three buildings. The Sylvanus Brown House, built in 1758, that had our little Becca, be seen looking out the windows. The Wilkinson Mill, built in 1810, completed in 1811, was a machine shop and water wheel pit. That had a shadow ghost, a shadow person. It seemed to be a masculine presence, but it was a shadow person. Seen through the windows, I saw it in there. I saw it when I was inside the machine shop and down in the water wheel pit. I wasn't alone in that. Other people saw the spike that it flung across the floor, and crutches, antique crutches that it pushed over and kind of flung. Slater Mill had a little boy. Slater Mill proper had a little boy, and I'm trying to remember what we called him, because we got a name on a novelist, and also I was thinking of that name. Something like Jared. I'll think of it later. But we had a little boy ghost there, and he'd been seen by people other than I, and apart from the ghost hunts. Also, there was a man that would be seen in the stairs in Slater Mill. I heard a woman weeping one night. Sometimes daytime tours would be interrupted by the sound of two men conversing.
Oh, wow.
And so there were multiple spirits at Slater Mill. Again, not every day. Most days, it was business as usual. I'd sometimes forget it's a haunted site. Like if it was April and nothing had happened, and I hadn't been there as much, and nothing strange had happened in a couple of months, the site's not haunted anymore. Then something would happen. Usually start coming in April. When the school, coincidentally perhaps, when the school groups would return, that's when paranormal activity would perk up.
Wow.
So I wonder if there's any correlation there.
Okay, I want you to share the story. I love the story. When you had returned back to the Perron house, share with my viewers about you looked in a mirror, and what did you see?
The mirror story.
Yes.
True story. I hadn't been at the house in Round Top, the farmhouse at Round Top, since that. When we went there to scout it out for an independent movie, I was a member of a film collaborative organization, and so it'd been, I don't know, 12 years since I'd been in that house, I think. And Jen and Corey Heinzen closed on the house, and that was 2019. believe it was 2019, was it? Yeah. Uh, they bought the house. They went out on a limb, bought the house because it's haunted. It's not like they were victimized and found, oh, our house is haunted. They, official residence was in Maine, but they purchased the house and lived there most of the time, or much of the time. So I brought Elise there. I told her about the house. I wanted her to see it. I think she'd been in there when it was a daycare, and they had something like a cooking demonstration because Norma Sutcliffe was very creative. But now Corey and Jen Heinzen had purchased the house at the farm on Round Top from Norma Sutcliffe. They moved in, and they wanted me there because they knew my history with the house. Corey had known me, and he wanted Carl Johnson there for the closing of the house. So I was very honored. Came over then. I brought Elise so she could see this wonderful house too, and she knew my stories about it. And of course, the movie had made it famous,
right?
Infamous. So I'm looking around the house, and I hadn't been there in a while, and I see this rectangular mirror, sizable mirror, on the wall of what was the parlor, used to be the kitchen. And I said, by gum, I think that's the mirror that was here when the Perrons owned this house. I know Norma had preserved it, so that's the mirror. Ah, boy, I haven't looked in that mirror in a long time. So I went up and had a look in the mirror, not expecting anything. Okay, it's so strange. My reflection, I saw myself as I looked when I was 18 years of age.
God, that's cool.
And this was so clear. I'm thinking, trick of the light? No. Imagination? Absolutely not. Inebriated? Probably not. No. This was like 1 in the afternoon, and it's just under ostensibly normal conditions. And I looked at myself, and I saw myself as a teenager. I had my same modern red polo shirt on, and my reflection was moving with me. However, my face was younger, and I had shoulder-length blonde hair and long sideburns. We all had sideburns back then. Even some of the girls had sideburns back then in 1973. And I just looked like I was a teenager again. It wasn't like watching a movie. It was just me. So I said, Corey, Elise, wait a minute. I thought, I know when they get in here, it's going to stop. If I keep yelling for them and they come in here. So what I did was the next best thing besides another eyewitness. I memorized it, the experience. I looked at my reflection, moved. Yep, it's moving with me. Looked at the window. No, it's no trick of the light. It was sunny outside, but it wasn't, glaring in. I just enjoyed it for had to be 3 minutes. I was looking at that straight.
That is
crazy. Yeah, maybe 5 minutes, but I'm memorizing this. I said, I am seeing this. I'm not going to distort my memory later. I know I'm seeing this. I'm just enjoying it. And boy, I hope they believe me. So eventually I walked away. And I just, I did what I usually do when I have a strange experience. I said, I've got something to tell you. I didn't blurt it out. Guys, it's just not me. Boy, can you imagine the letdown when they have a full-length mirror in their bathroom? And I saw myself. Yeah, there's a contrast there. There's a difference. Years whittle at you. But what an amazing thing. Now, Carolyn Perron in that same room had an experience where she walked in one day and saw men seated at a table. I don't know if it's a table that was there or the table just appeared, but there were 2 men seated at a table with tankards, what looked like pewter tankards, dressed in vintage clothing, old-fashioned clothing, like from 2 or more centuries before. And they looked in colonial dress. And they looked at Carolyn with astonishment. Then they vanished. Now, for those brief moments, Carolyn was the ghost to those 2 apparitions. I'm sure there was a time slippage. With my experience, I'm very sure there was. They looked at Carolyn. Karen looked at them. What is this saucy, near-naked lass? She would be in her jeans shorts, and she was a slender, very attractive woman. And, what is, this comely near naked wench? They must have been just as startled as her. And what could they say? Oh, I didn't believe in the devil before, but now I do. Something like that. I'm sure that's a true story. Carolyn would have no reason to fabricate that, and she's detailed about it.
I love the mirror story.
It's one of the outstanding experiences, not just of my paranormal investigation career, but of my life. I don't know. Maybe I should have called somebody else. Come on in. I don't think they would have seen it. Since I've told that story, other people have tried to replicate those results. Mike Ricksecker is on a talk show host and an adventurer. Mike Ricksecker looked at his reflection, stared at his reflection when he was there to document, and he's doing a documentary film. And he didn't get younger, but his face turned black and distorted. Did something strange. Elise has looked in the mirror, and she got kind of a double image, which she couldn't understand what that would mean.
Is that mirror still there?
Yep. Oh, that house is up for sale, and it has a serious bidder on it. I hope they leave. I hope the new owner.
Zach Bagans?
Yeah, no, it's not him. They refused. No, Zach Bagans there. Although I did investigate with Zach Bagan there.
Yeah.
Bagans. And,
that's right.
Yeah. But he was not on the gratis list for purchasing the house.
Gotcha.
But it was a good experience when I investigated with the Ghost Adventures team there. I've heard she's of paranormal interest. So I hope she keeps the mirror there. I hope I get a chance to meet her and tell her my story.
Yeah.
Maybe she will keep it there.
Absolutely.
It's going to be a bummer if that mirror breaks, but save the shards because they trigger objects. But, that was just I can't help but get wound up when I tell I tell it objectively, but it was an amazing experience to have that happen. I mean, I'm aware. I mean, I've been into the ghosty stuff for nearly 50 years, but I think it is 50 years now. But I have to put that on my paranormal resume. To actually have, but I'm basically sane, and to see this miracle happen, this strangeness happen, it's like, all right, there's more to heaven and earth that is dreamt of. How does that go? There's more to heaven and earth in this world, Horatio, than is dreamt of in your philosophy.
Yep.
And there it happened. I call it some kind of miracle. A miracle without a purpose, but a miracle nonetheless.
Absolutely. Well, Carl, we're going to wrap it up, but I want to thank you so much for being here. You're always entertaining, and for us, it's an honor to have you on.
Oh, thank you. I could have talked more about Phillip Experiment, but that was a real thing. It really did happen.
There's information on that. I'm going to read it.
Okay, well, I've got my Becca. Maybe we can try something with her.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I don't know if the ranger staff will allow me access to the Sylvanus Brown house, especially for such a purpose. I'd be kind of embarrassed to go in there and start speaking to the ghosts, but the daytime. But maybe.
It's because it's like in fact, I told Garrett, I said when I saw that episode, which, I didn't know about the previous experiment that they had done. And when I saw that, I said, I need to ask Carl about that.
Yeah.
Because if anybody knows anything about it, it'll be him.
Of course.
And so
delivered as always.
Yeah, absolutely. So it just, like I said, it totally fascinated me because you could just go all sorts of places with this. With what you put energy into.
Oh, I feel it. I feel the energy telling these stories. I mean, well, in my parents' house was the spirit of a woman. I don't know what else to call her. I saw her several times, and very clearly. And in August 1973, I captured my first EVP, spirit voice, on a recording, not knowing that anybody else could do that, not knowing that could be done. And it was in slow motion. I go, what's that slow voice? I had somebody else there with me when it happened. And then speed up that recording, get it going faster, and it becomes clear. It's a woman's voice, and it says, Carl, help me. Help.
Wow.
So maybe we want to speak to that spirit. too. When I speak to my spirit friends, they become like friends to me.
Yeah.
I wish them well.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Well, Carl, you have a wonderful night, man.
Thank you.
And thank you again so much. We got to do this again.
I didn't know if I'd be able to do it because I had an egregious toothache yesterday and Saturday and Sunday. It was awful. It's an infected molar, tooth number 31. That will come out towards the end of March. I have an appointment, but I'm on antibiotics.
Wait that long?
Yeah, I do, but it's not. The antibiotics will clear up the infection, and that's what causes the pain. If I need to get another prescription, I'll go in and do that. But yeah, I'm surprised they scheduled it that long, but keep me in suspense.
Yeah, well,
I get to enjoy my molar. Okay,
awesome.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good night, Carl.
Good night. Call me back.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Awesome.
Dude, I was like busting at the seams wanting to talk so bad. That was insane. That was awesome.
Oh, did you get to ask everything you wanted?
Well, not really because of the echo, but like the great thing about Carl is he literally was answering all the questions I was having.
You were sending your energy to Carl, and Carl was reading your energy and answering your questions.
It was amazing. He really is like, I love it when you're able to talk to somebody that's had just such a vast experience on so many. I mean, you had to remind him about the mirror thing. Can you imagine having that in your catalog?
That's the most awesome story I've ever heard. Can you imagine looking into a mirror and then seeing? But I get it. It's energy.
It is.
And he was once there, you know. So therefore, it's like it just recorded that energy and just played it back to him. You know, that's just, to me, just.
Okay, so I have to unpack some things really fast. Okay. I mean, I was like, guys, look, I was over here like writing shit
I'm
down.
sorry,
No, I couldn't. No, because I was into it. Like, I didn't want to. I had to, like, we're unpacking it.
Right.
I don't think I could have like really asked the questions in the moment because it just kept like unraveling. Right.
Yeah.
So one weird thing, like the whole Becca, you know, he talked about if the spirit is it's embedded and encoded into the fabric of the home. I was like, oh my God. Right. Yeah. But then to tie that in, you were talking about how we manifest things. And even if he was thinking about Becca, like when he was driving home and that trance beat was going on, maybe even subconsciously. Right. So now that's embedded into his psyche. Right. So the weirdest thing happened to me last week. Two things happened.
Okay.
One thing was I had this dream that I was in the Mustang facility and I was talking to this person I hadn't seen in a long time, and it happened throughout the dream. His name is Daniel Ellis. And I actually woke up the next day and I told Cass, I said, hey, I had this weird dream. I was talking to this guy I haven't seen in a couple of years. Lo and behold, literally 4 or 5 hours later, he texted me. I haven't talked to him in 2 years. Said, hey man, just thinking about you. Would love to get together and kind of catch up.
Yeah.
Okay. Story number one. Story number two. I'd been thinking about another person. His name's Jake. Okay. And I was like, man, I got to get in touch with Jake. I got to reach out to him. He's actually a UFC fighter. So there's no reason for him to ever think about me. Right. Like I work with this kid just off and on, just kind of an acquaintance. But I had been thinking over and over again. And I even told Cass, remind me, please, to reach out to Jake. I need to talk to him about a couple of things. And I really want to just see how he's doing. And for no reason whatsoever, I'm literally yesterday, Jake texted me, hey man, I'm thinking about you. Wanted to make sure you were doing okay. And so it kind of just segues into this episode where on 2 occasions I had these significant things that I was thinking about over and over again.
Yeah.
That manifested into reality.
It's like that, you know, when you're thinking about somebody and they call you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had that happen before.
Are your ears burning? I mean, there's
yeah. So there is something to that, I believe. I think that again, it's energy. You're sending out energy somehow, or maybe
and I'm not even meaning to. We're not meaning to.
Right.
That's the crazy thing about it.
Yeah, just thinking about it creates that energy.
Right.
And somehow it travels, you know?
Oh my God, Keith.
So it's like, yeah, that to me, this is one of the most, I mean, I'm nerding out on it, but it's like,
that's what we do.
That's one of the most interesting things I think there is.
The Phillip project
is creating energy. Yeah.
I
can't wait to read on that. Because
it's exactly what they were doing.
It's exactly what they were doing.
Yeah.
But yet, you know, Andy, Adam and Amy, of course, you know, being young as they are, they probably had no idea about this. But
it sounds like even something that other people have experienced, even Carl, like at his home with the lady as a child.
Yeah.
I mean, he essentially was proving the Phillip project and the Zombie Boy project or
Yes.
experiment. He was actually proving that by manifesting and personifying this, what became known as this woman. And even
Yeah.
her voice, when sped up, was like, Carl, help me. It was a female voice. Right. So
Right.
even at an early age, subconsciously, he was even proving the Phillip project. Right.
It's so cool.
Insane.
Yeah. It blows.
Crazy.
Yeah. I mean, and
It's so cool.
I hope the
dude.
viewers, I mean, I hope you guys find this interesting, but I mean, as what me and Garrett do.
I don't care if they do or not.
Because if you,
But I know they
no,
do.
no, I know.
And they do.
He didn't mean
I
that.
was reading, dude, like on this, and everyone's like, "Oh my god," because I think that everybody can kind of get on board with that.
Well, then it also makes you think too. Well, okay, what about priests who, there's a saying about if you look hard enough for something, you're going to find it. So therefore, if I believe in demons and I believe that this person's possessed,
Right?
did I create this demon?
Right.
Was I part of making this thing manifest? Because you got a religious family, Catholic family, or something like that. Kids acting weird, they're thinking it's demon possession. They start to believe it.
Right.
Therefore, and the kids, I'm sorry, but the kids can pick up on that.
Right.
And so then they start to maybe believe it. The priest comes in. He, well, of course, I do think they look at, mental illness, and
Of course.
they do, but I think you can manifest. I'm not saying in all cases, that's the case, but I'm just saying in some cases, I bet that could be a possibility that they actually put so much energy into this evil spirit that they created it.
Yes.
And,
I mean, let's talk about like the real life implications of this. One of the things I talked about last night on the show I was on was they said if you could like give parents, like soccer parents, advice, what would it be? And mine was really choose how you talk in front of your kids wisely. Like be very, very conscious of how we speak in front of our kids in regards to the game, right?
Right.
Because if I'm talking, I'm like, oh, Cleo, like, okay, let's take my daughter Cleo, and if every time she's out at a game, I'm like, oh, she has no interest in it to somebody, right?
Yeah.
Oh no, she's gonna be a ballerina. She has no interest in this. She's hearing that at 4 years old,
Absolutely.
right? So that's gonna manifest. So what do?
Hey.
I say, oh yeah, later. No, she's gonna enjoy it later, yeah, or something like that.
Well, then let's look at it too as child abuse. When you got the dad who says you're an idiot, man, you're never going to be anything. You say this,
dumbass.
Yeah, you create that as a reality for that child.
Right.
And so unfortunately, you got all these kids who are very insecure. They don't have a lot of confidence because they were told you're dumb, you're stupid, you're not going to amount to anything.
Man, I mean, one thing that we do is we talk, like one of our pet peeves is body language. I talked about it last night too, demeanor. Right. Because even if I'm down, if I'm carrying myself a certain way and that's like playing in my head, over time, I'm just going to act that way. I'm going to feel that way. Right.
Yeah.
And so, man, this manifestation kind of like rabbit hole we went down tonight, it just has so many implications. It can go like to real time to even that time, dude, what he was talking about, Carolyn, is it Carolyn Perron?
Carolyn Perron. Yeah.
When she walked in and the people like look at her like, oh my God. She envisioned them. She was the ghost to them. Even that was just like, what in the hell?
Yeah.
Right?
What if that?
Time slippage?
Yes, exactly. Which almost then you can go down a whole rabbit hole.
Yes.
With everything's happening at the same time, even the past.
String theory, bro.
Yeah, and
I'm like, yeah.
So what if things just do continuously repeat?
Right.
And like you said, there was a time slippage,
and they were like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Did I see an alien? Hey,
do they go back in their time and go, God, you won't believe I just saw a girl.
What I was gonna say to Carl in that moment is that they probably did, and then they probably got burned at the stake. They're like, oh, you guys are, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
I mean, that could definitely like just account for so many different questions that we have, though, right? I mean, honestly, it just lends itself to more questions than answers always.
It does,
which is fascinating in itself.
It does. Like I said, I don't think it's that in all cases, but I do.
Right.
But I do, man. I believe it. A lot of it is that.
Yeah.
Because I would think, like you have a house, people's, it's got a history of it's haunted.
Right.
So people say they move in, they believe it.
Right.
Take that family. Okay. So therefore things happen. Okay. Let's say another couple moves in. Well, you know what? We really don't believe in the paranormal. Nothing happens.
Right.
They didn't give any energy. They gave no
Right.
force or life force to this thing.
Right.
For things to happen.
I mean, I think he put it best whenever he was talking about like the radiator is not really the one walking down the stairs towards me.
Right.
But in his mind as a child, that noise that could have been a radiator all of a sudden has turned into a spirit that's walking at him. And maybe it just did become a spirit.
Yeah.
Maybe that noise, that energy, because he gave it a personification, right? Matched together, and now all of a sudden it is a spirit. It's a freaking spirit. I mean, that's unbelievable. That is remarkable. Yeah. And that's what we talked about tonight.
But so do you have to wake? And the good question you had is like, well, do you have to wake this thing up? I mean, in other words, if I created a spirit here, I leave.
Maybe you can activate it when you die.
Well, I wouldn't do that. But I'm just saying, no. If a couple comes in, do they have to have some knowledge of it to therefore give it life?
Well, see the way
or you could just have people like you and me who believe in the paranormal, and when they come into the house, they go, and the first thing you think is, I wonder if this house is haunted. I wonder if this house is haunted. And so I think as soon as you change your thinking and you think like that, then things will start happening. Now, does it wake up what was conjured in the house previously? You know,
man, well,
or do you create, or do you make it worse by you've not only woken this thing up, but now you've created something else?
Well, my thinking is this: is that a lot of hands have gone in. Let's stop talking about your house first off. Let's just talk about a house in general.
Yeah.
After this,
because my house is not haunted.
Yes, it's not. But no, my point is this.
I'm in the new house. So
okay, let's talk about Garrett. Okay, what if when I die, I am able to my spirit. Because in my life, I have exuded a lot of energy into a lot of different people in a lot of different areas, right? And specifically, like you always say, like somewhere where you live and reside or where I work, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe that's my tether to the real world, right?
Yeah.
As a spirit, I'm tethered to all the places where I left my residual energy. So therefore, Becca could be in that house, tethered to it, and how did he get the name Becca? Did he just give it to her? Or is there like did he say historically? So. Well, because I mean, he accesses like records and stuff. So I didn't know if there had been a Becca that lived there or something.
Yeah, I don't.
Okay.
God, I don't remember.
Okay. I'm going to have to ask Carl that next time. Hey, can we have him on again?
Absolutely.
And have him I'll send him some earbuds.
Yeah. We'll give him some earbuds. He said he has some. And I was thinking about that because, with using StreamYard, I've been but I've seen other people who we've interviewed and they didn't have earbuds on and there was no echo. So
we'll sort it out.
I'm not sure.
It was kind of cool though, because we had to kind of just shut the hell up a little bit.
Yeah. And people probably like that. No, well, remember we got that comment about that one guy said, you guys talk all over your guests.
Yeah.
A good interviewer steps back and listens. And I've been working on that too.
No, but I mean, for Carl though, like he was saying, he's been doing this for 50 years, man.
Yeah,
that's a long time to be really focused and engaged and in tune with what's going on. So, dude, so humbled.
Yeah, very much. I mean,
thank you for doing that, getting him on.
I thank him for coming. Yeah. I mean, the guy's he's a legend, man. He's a legend. Started his own thing or joined that group,
right?
And P.I.R.O, and then it's I think it sucks that Ed and Lorraine, again, nothing bad about Ed and Lorraine, but they got all the glory for something that Carl and Keith actually found.
Okay, but check this out. I was thinking while he was talking about this, that like if they would have never brought Ed and Lorraine in, it probably just would have been like we were saying, just
that crossed my mind,
right? And we wouldn't be here talking to Carl right now,
right? Yeah, I mean, they could investigate the house without bringing it's a Bathsheba, the witch,
right?
All this
you
stuff.
See what I'm saying, though?
Yeah.
That's another stream.
And Carl and Keith may have been a routine investigation,
right?
Where you have something here. It's not evil, so you have nothing to worry about. That kind of thing. But then you got Ed and Lorraine who bring their just demons.
And he may have never had that experience with the mirror all these years later, because he said that was in like 2019 when he had the experience with the mirror.
Yeah.
Right. And to him, he said paranormal everything, but hands down the most amazing experience of his life.
Oh, so absolutely. Yeah, that's why I happen to share that story. any of the people who weren't here the first time, because Carl told that story.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought it up because
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, yeah. I forgot about
And
that.
what a just mind blowing.
Yeah.
To be able to, I mean, for a fraction of time, or not even 5 minutes, he said,
Yeah.
I think he stood there, that you got to experience
Yeah.
yourself, you know, back in from the 70s. He
Right.
said he had the long hair, which
The-
when he was talking about that, I was scouring. I was trying to find that because I have all these pictures of Carl when he had like shoulder length hair.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't find it.
Fascinating.
But if you go back and watch the other show of Carl, I've got all the pictures of Carl, what he looked like.
Just a fascinating.
Yeah,
interview.
very intelligent guy and very cool. Okay, well, let's talk about next week's show. I'm thinking if you guys, let's see, we got 4 people watching. So
Yeah, we got,
I was going to say, everybody do your homework, but no, there's a case, and I'm going to try to have it ready for you guys by next week. Don't quote me on that. We may have to make it 2 weeks because it's a very interesting story.
Yeah.
It's called Yuba County 5, and it actually happened this month, back in 1978, I think. And Drew Beeson, who we had on, who, you know, he'd had the book, the Zodiac, Sighting In on a Zodiac, right? He wrote a book about that as well.
Yes.
And I've got his book. I'm going to try to get it finished. I'm going to finish it. I'm going to finish it.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it this weekend.
It is a fascinating case.
It is. 5 kids who were mentally challenged. One really wasn't. He was just schizophrenic.
Yeah.
And the things that happened, these kids disappeared. They found them, and
has some Delta pass kind of feel to
it is, but you know, it's even maybe more strange.
Yeah,
maybe more strange. If you guys get a chance, look up the Yuba County 5, watch it. You know, there's a bunch of stuff on YouTube on that, and so that way you kind of know when we start talking about it. But it is crazy weird. Oh, and an update.
Brandon Lawson.
Yeah, Brandon Lawson's body was found. You know, we had the
Colts
Crime and Cabernet.
Dude, they're killing it, by the way.
Yeah, and in fact, they sent me that thing. Hey, they found the body. And
cool.
Which I saw and I read it. So they did find this guy's body. They found some clothes.
Yeah.
And I think, if I remember right, it wasn't too far away.
Right. Yeah.
From
where they were at. The Colts,
yeah, which is kind of weird because you think the closer to the car, they would have found them in 15 minutes or something, right?
Right.
But again, I don't know exactly where the body was found.
We'll have to have them back on.
Yeah,
maybe to talk about that.
We do. We need to do an update on it, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So, all right, guys. Anyway, we are going to end this thing. Thank you so much.
Good night,
you guys, for showing up. We really appreciate it. We love you guys.
Yeah, it was a great show.
Great. Yeah, this is awesome show, man. Awesome show.
Like and subscribe.
All right, we'll see you. Good night.
Good night.